briefing that is scheduled to start at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So we'll be heading over to that as soon as that begins. We do know those tend to occasionally run a little behind schedule. So whenever that starts, we'll head over to the briefing. President Trump actually was in an intelligence briefing earlier this morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, and then he's also signing executive orders later today at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. So what the executive orders are about, we still don't know. We will keep you updated on that as soon as we do find out. But again, that briefing is next on the agenda, and that is scheduled to start at 1 p.m. But until then, we will go over to our very own Emerald Robinson, who's going to join us for a pre-briefing appearance. Emerald, it's great to see you. How are you today?
Good to see you too, Allison. Lovely, lovely. It'll be interesting to see. You know, we're approaching the Labor Day holiday. Most people kind of check out. I mean, Congress has already checked out, right? It's August, so they checked out.
They've been checked out. Yeah.
Yeah, we could make the case that they're often checked out. But yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what kind of news. I was just talking with, of course, the president's attorney, Peter Tickton, or one of them, a good friend of his, and then Patrick Byrne, because we're waiting, obviously, for actions as it relates to our elections. And there's some speculation it could, something could be dropped today or tomorrow. But I don't know. I don't know what if you want to really drop big news prior to a holiday when most Americans are probably focused on their barbecue instead of really politics, as everyone needs those kind of mental breaks.
Yes, that is true. That is true, though we have known this administration to drop some pretty big bombshells on Fridays. I mean, just last week, we had, what was it last week? We had all of the Chicago crime stuff. We also, I think, had the Russia hoax explosion on a Friday a couple weeks before that. So, I don't think the day of the week necessarily stops them. The John Bolton raid, there's that, yes. Yeah, I mean, the fun never stops with the Trump administration. So I wouldn't put anything past him. But I think strategically, it's better to break big news earlier in the week, perhaps not approaching a holiday weekend. But if I had to take a shot in the dark, I would suspect much of the briefing today will have to do with the tragic shooting that just took place in Minneapolis. Yeah. The two children that very tragically were shot and killed thanks to this transgender gunman who was obviously a deranged, demonic, perhaps demon possessed. I don't know. It's just very disturbing to watch that video footage. But this is obviously causing an uproar within the conservative community. Liberals don't seem to really want to address the elephant in the room, which is the fact that this is a transgender male. They're referring to him as a female. And, he was probably hopped up on quite a bit of medication. We know that many of these people are depressed and severely mentally ill. And this has been a repeated issue in that community for a number of occasions now. This is very sad that this had to happen. But do you suspect, Emerald, that anything will be discussed today in the briefing surrounding the latest shooting with this transgender gunman?
Well, of course, it's going to come up. Of course, the issue of gun control always comes up, and the fact that Republican administrations are much more pro First Amendment. We've already seen in the corporate media, right? As I think you noted earlier, I know you did, at least on our call, that we have our morning little chit chats where we talk about all this, y'all. I also brought up the fact that they're trying to pin this. They've even tried to. They're so shameless. I've sat with them. I've sat with them in events like this, covering it right when there was, some kind of massive act of violence, or just when I remember, like the Nate Sandman incident. Remember where they had the altercation with the Native American and the Catholic kid, and I remember sitting in that room behind you in the White House briefing room, and all the liberal reporters there, because they are all liberal, started spinning this narrative that this was some racist kid, that he was just this bad kid. And I said, you all should probably wait, because you're going to find out a lot more. Right. And so that's what they automatically do. They automatically make a move to make President Trump look bad. And that's what they've tried to do in this instance. But if they try to come at Caroline Leavitt with that today, she has lots of, I hate to say the word ammunition, because look, this is now multiple shootings committed by quote unquote transgenders. I think that there's a conversation to be had about the SSRIs. I know Bobby Kennedy has been looking into that. That's a topic that's on his agenda as HHS secretary, because that is a public health issue, right? That is a health safety issue, because obviously there's, you know, you can say, well, it's speculation because it's someone's medical records, so we can't say definitively, but one would surmise, given what this person said about themselves in their journals, which did get released online. Obviously a very disturbed person, probably had been to lots of counseling, had seen lots of doctors, and had obviously, you know, was versed in treatment. There's the conversation to be had, but they had tried to spin it as, oh, this might even be a Trump supporter because he had Donald Trump's name on his gun. So if they come at her with that today, I think they'll look pretty bad. I think she'll give it right back to him, because they're just not on solid footing there. But there is definitely a conversation to be had. I think she'll probably come out and address that head on. Of course, we saw J.D. Vance yesterday saying that everyone at the White House was watching and they were monitoring it. But I think you'll have Caroline Leavitt come out and probably hit that incident head on. I actually had Mike Lindell on the show yesterday. You know, he is from the great state of Minnesota. That's where the MyPillow operation is. And he just talked about the crisis that state has, not just for, you know, obviously the trans issue is a national issue. And there's obviously a correlation between these shootings and trans ideology, whether it be the drugs that they're on, the mental health crisis that it presents. But Mike was just saying, in Minnesota in general, especially Minneapolis, they have a major issue with crime based on the terrible leadership in the state. So there's a lot of conversation to be had around the situation in Minneapolis. Of course, as a mother, I can't fathom it. We've all been praying and, you know, praying for these families, but it's time to broach the issue head on and call it what it is. It's trans violence. It's mental health crisis. It's a spiritual battle too. If you looked at the notes that person that man had drawn, and the videos he made, it was very clear that there was a lot more spiritually going on there as well. And, you know, that's a taboo conversation to have.
Oh, I wouldn't count on any liberal outlets to report on that aspect of it. But no, it's true. I mean, I think that was very evident if anyone watched any bit of the video footage. I mean, he goes in and out of talking in different voices, this very disturbing, demonic laugh. Just the fact that he had "Kill Donald Trump" written on the magazine, one he was reserved specifically for the children. I mean, this guy obviously was deeply unwell, and like I said, even possibly demon possessed. I mean, I know that might sound crazy to some, but I think that is a very legitimate possibility. I think that's the only way you could really justify what just happened. So it's very disturbing, all of it. You know, I tried to do a little report on this yesterday, Emerald, and I put a little package together. It was about 3 minutes long, just highlighting what happened and some of the points I included in there. I did really touch on the fact that the leadership over in Minnesota is so lacking. I mean, their lieutenant governor over there, Peggy Flanagan, has a shirt that says "Protect Trans Kids" that she wears proudly. The mayor just recently said, like a matter of weeks ago, that Minneapolis is a sanctuary city for illegal aliens and trans kids and, you know, all criminals alike, really. So yeah, they're failing massively over there, which certainly doesn't help this ongoing issue, and just, in fact, I would say makes it far worse. But the fact that I'm reporting on this and I can't even have a video posted about this. I mean, my video got removed from Instagram. It got flagged because it didn't like me talking about transgender people. I was just reporting on the facts. Like, I literally was just pointing out the simple facts. And I guess Instagram got really upset about the fact that I hammered down on the point that this was a transgender who obviously had some mental issues. And so the video was just removed. You can see here, that's what it told me. So, I mean, this is crazy, Emerald. What are your thoughts? I feel like the censorship aspect of this is a whole other angle that needs to be discussed, because it's like, unless you're following the liberal narrative, then you're going to get censored and shut down and silenced, which has been obviously a repeating trend over the last several years. And I'm sure our viewers know that all too well. Anyone who was outspoken during COVID and anyone who's at all critical of the liberal agenda seems to have this issue. But now this is the latest. Your thoughts?
It's a problem. It's even more of a problem now because it's happening under the Trump administration, during the Trump administration, when we should have a champion in the White House that is anti-censorship. I am concerned that there is a lack of focus or action on this from the White House. This was supposedly an issue that was near and dear to the president's heart during the first term. And remember, there was supposed to be an executive order, or at least one or two, that would address the issue of censorship. There was talk about reforming Section 230. There was lots of outreach to the social media influencer community in a way to try to fix the censorship issue. That executive order never got done, though, during the first term. There was lots to talk about.
It's incredibly disappointing. Emerald, I'm just hearing that the briefing is up, but hopefully Kara gets a question about the censorship. We'll see what happens in there. We're going over to the briefing now. Emerald, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Other children and 3 adults were also injured during this horrible tragedy. This was the first morning mass of the school year for these beautiful, innocent children, and this sacred religious service was desecrated by an evil monster. We are all eternally grateful to the heroic law enforcement officers and first responders whose courage and swift response aided all of those impacted by this horrible tragedy. As Director Kash Patel confirmed yesterday, the FBI is currently investigating this shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. President Trump signed a proclamation yesterday following his call with the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, acknowledging the victims and their families and directing flags to be flown at half-mast. President Trump and the First Lady encouraged the entire nation to join all of us in praying for the victims and their families as they face unimaginable grief and loss. The White House and the FBI will continue to provide further updates as they become available. I also have a quick scheduling announcement for you today. The President will travel to New York City on September 22nd to address the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday, September 23rd. On another matter, as Americans make their Labor Day weekend travel plans, they will be able to enjoy 5-year low gas prices thanks to President Trump fully unleashing American energy dominance. President Trump ended Joe Biden's Green New Scam policies and is delivering on his promise to make America affordable again. These savings at the pump are giving everyday American families more room in their budgets at the end of each month, which is the exact opposite of what we saw under the previous administration. And as we commemorate Labor Day this year, we finally have a president who fights and delivers for the American worker every single day. President Trump believes that American workers are the heart and soul of our economy and our national identity, which is why he's championed an agenda that puts them first always. For decades, the hardworking men and women of our country who built the greatest nation in world history were sold out by selfish, greedy, short-sighted globalists who put our country on a path to economic and cultural ruin. They hollowed out our factories and towns and betrayed the American working class by shipping jobs overseas and importing millions of low-wage migrants to replace American workers. Under President Trump, this national disgrace is over. American workers are, once again, being put at the center of national trade policy, and the dignity of American labor is being defended. As a result, President Trump has already brought in nearly $10 trillion in new private and foreign investments, so that the top businesses in the world can create high-paying jobs in America and hire American workers to fill them. In fact, since President Trump took office, the economy has added more than 500,000 new jobs to the workforce. In a stark reversal from the Biden administration, all of that job creation has been driven by private sector growth, and all employment gains have gone to native-born Americans. Wages for blue-collar workers are now rising at the fastest rate in the past 60 years. And the average American worker has already seen a $500 wage increase this year alone. Thanks to the largest middle tax cuts ever signed into law by President Trump, with no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, Americans in all 50 states will keep more of their hard-earned money. The average American taxpayer will see a tax cut of nearly $4,000 because of these pro-growth provisions, according to analysis from the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation. In other news, President Trump continues to deliver on his promise to restore law and order to our nation's capital. Since President Trump's intervention, there have been more than 1,283 arrests right here in the District of Columbia. Total crime in D.C. is down 19%, and violent crime is down 30%. Carjackings in the district are down 67%. Homicides are down 57%. Robberies are down 40%. Motor vehicle thefts are down 32%. And assaults with dangerous weapons are down 23%. And property crime is down 18%. These numbers prove the president's bold actions to make D.C. safe and beautiful again are working, just like he said they would. And that's why on Monday, the president took additional action to sign an executive order taking steps to ensure that cashless bail in Washington, D.C. is eliminated. For too long, D.C.'s reckless cashless bail policies have allowed dangerous criminals to be quickly released, which endangers everyone who lives in and visits our wonderful capital. No cash bail has also foolishly forced law enforcement to repeatedly arrest the same offenders over and over again, only for them to be released back into our nation's capital. This is the definition of insanity, and the president is seeking to end it. He also signed a separate executive order addressing the crime emergency in D.C. by instructing the National Park Service to hire additional United States Park Police officers to support public safety, and directing the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. to hire additional prosecutors to focus solely on violent and property crimes. So while liberal Democrats across the country continue to double down on their failed soft on crime approach, the American people, including local D.C. leadership, business owners, and residents, are rallying behind President Trump's crime crackdown. According to new polling, 81% of Americans say crime is a major problem in large cities across the country. And a clear majority of Americans believe the president's actions are justified and necessary to reduce crime in these cities. Indu Bhatia, who runs a liquor store a half mile from the White House here just down the street, is one of those Americans who are grateful for President Trump's public safety push. Indu recently told the New York Post that her store was robbed so many times that they had to spend exorbitant sums of money on security, jeopardizing her family's financial future. But thanks to President Trump's strong action, Indu said, quote, "All of my employees, including me, we feel much safer, and even our customers feel really happy when they walk into our store." And just yesterday, Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser credited President Trump for surging federal law enforcement personnel and said neighborhoods, quote, "feel and are much safer." We thank Mayor Bowser for her cooperation and her willingness to help us make D.C. safe and beautiful. This entire effort has vindicated what President Trump and law and order advocates have been saying for years, and this is our message to Americans in Democrat-run cities nationwide. Decline is a choice. You don't have to live in constant fear of being robbed, raped, or murdered. Your leaders are lying to you, and they have been failing you for decades. The President Trump approach of upholding law and order by letting our brave men and women in blue actually do their jobs to aggressively fight crime works. In just a few weeks, President Trump has done more for D.C. residents than Democrats did in 50 years. And this can be replicated in other crime-ridden cities across the nation. As President Trump has said, all of these elected officials in charge have to do is pick up the phone and ask for the president and the federal government's help. President Trump doesn't care if they are a Republican or a Democrat leader. He wants Americans to be safe and for every law-abiding American citizen across the country to be able to thrive in their city and in their community. With that, I'll take questions. Here in our new media seat today, we have social media influencer, content creator, Brandon Tatum. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't you kick us off?
Well, Caroline, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And on behalf of everybody that follow me, the millions of people that follow me, I want to say thank you for making the sacrifice and dealing with some of the most disingenuous people on planet Earth at times. I have two questions. The first question is associated with the shooting that occurred the other day. And I want to ask the question of, we know that it's not a gun thing. Any rational person knows it's not a gun thing. We know it's a mental health issue. So I want to know from you, what is President Trump and the White House going to do to address mental health issues around the country associated with these shootings? And the second thing is Chicago. You know, anybody with, and I say, with a connected brainstem knows that Chicago's crime is out of control. And young black men are getting killed, laying dead in the middle of the streets every single day in Chicago. No president has addressed any of these issues. And so what is the White House going to do to address issues in their capacity to deal with the conflict and violence in Chicago?
Sure. Well, to your first question about this shooting in Minnesota, right now, the administration is focused on helping the people of Minnesota. It's been less than a day, of course, since this tragedy happened. We have federal law enforcement on the ground assisting local law enforcement. This investigation is ongoing. There's still a lot of facts to understand about these circumstances, and so we're going to continue to do that. As for Chicago and cracking down on crime, it is a priority of this administration to ensure that American cities are safe again, and I'm so glad that you brought up the crime in Chicago, because we've been seeing the governor of Illinois parading out there saying that there's nothing wrong with Chicago. It's a great place to live. There's no crime there. He doesn't need President Trump's help. Well, I think the residents of Chicago beg to differ, and the statistics beg to differ. And I'll just share a few of those statistics with all of you. For 13 consecutive years, Chicago has had the most murders of any U.S. city. This is J.B. Pritzker's legacy, by the way. For 7 consecutive years, Chicago has had the highest murder rate among U.S. cities with more than 1 million people. In 2024, just last year, Chicago's murder rate per capita was 3 times higher than Los Angeles and nearly 5 times higher than New York City. That's more than double the murder rate in Islamabad and nearly 15 times more than Delhi. Out of Chicago's 147,899 reported crimes this year, that's how many crimes have been reported in Chicago since January 1st. There have only been arrests in 16% of them. These numbers are unacceptable. There have been more illegal guns recovered in Chicago than in New York City and Los Angeles combined. The number of reported motor vehicle thefts last year was more than double the number in 2021. And Chicago has also, just like DC, come under scrutiny over discrepancies in its homicide data reporting. So as bad as these numbers are, perhaps they are even worse. And this is Governor Pritzker's legacy. He should put politics aside. He should pick up the phone and call this president, who would be more than happy to do right by law-abiding American residents in the city of Chicago, and we hope that he will. Gabe, and thanks for being here, Brandon. Gabe.
Carolyn, thank you so much. First on the firing of the CDC director. First,
Sure.
Who will replace her? And then also, overnight, the White House said that she did not align with the president's agenda. Dr. Menard's attorneys say that she refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives and fire dedicated health experts. What specifically did she do wrong?
Look, what I will say about this individual is that her lawyer's statement made it abundantly clear themselves that she was not aligned with the president's mission to make America healthy again. And the secretary asked her to resign. She said she would, and then she said she wouldn't, so the president fired her, which he has every right to do. It was President Trump who was overwhelmingly reelected on November 5th. This woman has never received a vote in her life, and the president has the authority to fire those who are not aligned with his mission. A new replacement will be announced by either the president or the secretary very soon. And the president and Secretary Kennedy are committed to restoring trust and transparency and credibility to the CDC by ensuring their leadership and their decisions are more public-facing, more accountable, strengthening our public health system, and restoring it to its core mission of protecting Americans from communicable diseases, investing in innovation to prevent, detect, and respond to future threats. That's the mission of the CDC, and we're going to make sure that folks that are in positions of leadership there are aligned with that mission.
Briefly on another topic, Alligator Alcatraz. Last week, a judge on an environmental concerns lawsuit said that the administration had 60 days to wind down operations there, state officials did. Now, the administration has not been shy in fighting back against what it calls activist judges, but why is it backing down this time?
We're not backing down. We've always said that we are going to continue to fight in the court of law for what's right, because we know that what this administration is doing with respect to all policy, but also immigration policy, is above the books, and we're abiding by our nation's immigration laws. And we think it's despicable that an activist judge has inserted themselves in this migrant detention facility to the point where DHS is now having to relocate these illegal immigrants to other detention facilities around the country. That is an unnecessary burden on the Department of Homeland Security and these agents who should be removing these criminals from our community. That's what the American people elected this president to do. So we've always maintained, Gabe, we're going to comply with court orders, but we're also going to fight back on them on the merits of the law. And DHS is in compliance while we disagree with this decision, and we'll continue to fight it in court. Let's go to.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Thanks so much. So just following up on the CDC firing.
Sure.
Are you anticipating other changes there at CDC in addition to that firing? And is the administration going through in a very sort of organized fashion? Is there a task force that's going through high-level appointees to see who is or isn't aligned with the mission? Like, should we expect more changes?
Not to my knowledge. I understand there were a few other individuals who resigned after the firing of Ms. Monarez. One of those individuals wrote in his departure statement that he identifies pregnant women as pregnant people. So that's not someone who we want in this administration anyway. So if people are not aligned with the president's vision and the secretary's vision to make our country healthy again, then we will gladly show them the door.
Caroline, can I just follow up on...
Go to the back.
Thank you,
Yes.
Caroline.
Go behind you, Andrew. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. The military deployment that President Trump has sent to the Caribbean Sea close to the shores with Venezuela is massive. It's much more that is needed to simply counter narcotics operations. Is President Trump considering launching military strikes to military installments or facilities in Venezuelan soil?
I won't get ahead of the president with respect to any military action or questions about that ever. But what I will tell you is that many Caribbean nations and many nations in the region have applauded the administration's counter-drug operations and efforts, and the president is prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. And as I've said from this podium before, the Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. Maduro is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this drug cartel. He has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into our country, and it is the utmost responsibility of this president and this administration to prevent the illicit flow of drugs into our country and to protect citizens from those deadly poisons. Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. I have two questions for you.
Sure.
Democrats, including former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, attacked prayer and pushed gun control in the aftermath of yesterday's shooting. What's the White House's response to their comments?
Yes, I saw the comments of my predecessor, Ms. Psaki, and frankly, I think they're incredibly insensitive and disrespectful to the tens of millions of Americans of faith across this country who believe in the power of prayer, who believe that prayer works, and who believe that in a time of mourning like this, when beautiful young children were killed while praying in a church, it's utterly disrespectful to deride the power of prayer in this country, and it's disrespectful to the millions of Americans of faith. And I would encourage Ms. Psaki to pray for these families themselves who need it right now more than ever.
My second question for you is that there have been media outlets who have glazed over the fact that the shooter was confused in their gender identity. Does the administration believe that this element needs to be investigated in the shooting?
All of the elements are being investigated in the shooting, absolutely. Which is why part of the reason the FBI director came out and immediately confirmed that facet of the investigation. John.
Thanks a lot, Carolyn. Two questions on two separate issues. First of all, the drone and missile strikes that took place overnight in Ukraine. General Keith Kellogg, the president's special envoy, has described these attacks as egregious. Do you agree with that description, and do you view President Putin as an impediment to getting peace between these two countries?
Well, it's not about if I agree, it's about what the president thinks, and I know what the president thinks because I talked to him about this. He was not happy about this news, but he was also not surprised. These are two countries that have been at war for a very long time. Russia launched this attack on Kyiv, and likewise, Ukraine recently dealt a blow to Russia's oil refineries. They have taken out, as a matter of fact, 20% of Russia's oil refinery capacity over the course of their attacks throughout the month of August. So the president is continuing to watch this intently, and this killing, unfortunately, will continue as long as the war continues, which is why the president wants it to end. And that's why he's worked harder than anyone to end this war, which would have never started if he were president. But perhaps both sides of this war are not ready to end it themselves. The president wants it to end, but the leaders of these two countries need it to end and want it to end, must want it to end as well. And I think the president will make some additional statements on this later.
My second question has to do with
Carrie.
I just had one more, if I may. It has to do with the president's intention to remove Lisa Cook as a member of the Federal Reserve Board. He is going or acting upon allegations that have been made by Trump administration official Bill Pulte. These are just allegations. She hasn't been convicted yet of any crime. Is the administration opposed to allowing Ms. Cook to have due process, to challenge what has been alleged against her?
I believe she is challenging it. I believe she just filed a lawsuit today, and Mr. Pulte has deferred those allegations over to the Department of Justice to investigate them. What I will say is that you had these mortgage receipts very clearly shown to the president, and he has the cause that he needs to fire this individual. He laid it out in the letter that he provided to her and to the public as well. And so we'll continue to fight this battle. Carrie.
Hi, Caroline. So the president just announced that he wants to have a convention right before the midterms next year. The DNC has countered that they too want to have a convention right before the midterms as well. What's the White House's response to that? And can you give us just a little bit of a hint or a tease here as to how the president envisions a convention for the midterms?
Look, the president put out a statement on this earlier today. I'll let him speak further on the plans that he envisions, but I think he's very proud of the accomplishments and the achievements of his administration, as he should be. The most secure border in United States history, a crackdown on crime here in our nation's capital, an attack or a reversal of the attack on our energy industry from the previous administration. As I just pointed out to you, gas prices today, this Labor Day, are the lowest they've been since Labor Day in 2020. Our economy is bringing in trillions of dollars in revenue from all over the world again. So there's so much for Republicans and for the president and for Americans across the country to be proud of, and I think the president wants to see that celebrated. But for any further details on this as they come, we'll provide you with them. Iris.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions on the shooting. What's the administration's message to some concerned parents across the country who might be now worried about their kids' safety in light of the latest incident?
We completely and totally understand the concerns of parents across the country. This tragedy it's heartbreaking. As a parent myself, there are no words to describe just the heartbreak that these families must be enduring, which is why the president and the first lady have encouraged everyone to continue to pray for these families and these victims. And it's why this administration is focused on removing public safety threats from our communities. And in fact, I can share with all of you that last night in Washington, D.C., when arrests were being made, there was an arrest of a juvenile right here in D.C. in Ward 7 for threats to kidnap and injure, receiving stolen property, possession of a large capacity feeding device, unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition. A search warrant was executed, 7 firearms were recovered, and the juvenile was arrested after an investigation was initiated based on social media posts allegedly threatening violence towards a school. So this was a juvenile who was a risk to not just himself, but the community here in Washington, and he was removed from the community last night because of the law enforcement efforts of this administration. And I would also point to the statement of our wonderful First Lady that she released yesterday. She wrote, "The tragic mass killing in Minnesota illuminates the need for preemptive intervention in identifying school shooters. Early warning signs are often evident, with many individuals exhibiting concerning behaviors and making violent threats online prior to their actions. We encourage all Americans, as the old saying goes, if you see something, say something. If you see warning signs or threats, report it to law enforcement." This administration, federal law enforcement, will take those reports and those threats seriously. They will be treated as a law enforcement emergency, and we will act accordingly.
And on the First Lady's statement, would the administration consider ramping up resources on these fronts to parents and schools across the country to help them look into these signs and prevent more tragedies?
It's a very fair question, Iris. As for any potential future policy decisions or funding questions, it's just been over 24 hours since this tragedy occurred. Right now we're focused on the FBI and their investigation and uncovering all the facts, and we'll leave those very important policy discussions to another day.
Thank you, Caroline.
Go ahead. Megan.
I had a question about the Lisa Cook lawsuit that you mentioned. Does the president plan to wait until that lawsuit is resolved to appoint her replacement?
I will leave that to the president to make that decision in that announcement himself. Brian.
Thank you, Caroline. 2 questions. Bouncing off the CDC situation at CDC, I'm curious if administration officials are pushing back on the president's agenda, privately, publicly, however, should they fear to lose their jobs going forward?
Look, I think if you're doing your job well And if you are executing on the vision and the promises that the president made to the public who elected him back to this office, then you should have no fear about your job. Just do your job. That's what this president wants to see. He wants to see people solving problems. He wants to see the people who have the privilege of serving the American taxpayer and the federal government abiding by the wishes of the American taxpayers who overwhelmingly reelected him in this cabinet to make America great again, or in this case, make America healthy again.
On the Intel deal, where the U.S. got a stake in that company, there's two things I want to ask about that. The first is, what did the U.S. get back in return for that deal? And the second thing is, what are the future plans for giving any form of money to another company? It could be through the CHIPS Act, like this deal, or some other form of funds. What are the plans there by this White House administration?
Well, look, as you know, Brian, very well, because you cover it often, the Intel deal is still being ironed out by the Department of Commerce. The T's are still being crossed, the I's are still being dotted. It's very much still under discussion. But the president's thinking, I can share with you, is certainly to ensure that the United States government is making our country wealthy again and is benefiting from some of these deals. And it's a creative solution. I know it's outside the box thinking, which is uncommon in this city, but it's something that he proposed and something that the Secretary of Commerce is working on putting into action. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. I have a couple questions on the shooting yesterday. The first one, this is the second shooting involving a trans-identifying shooter who specifically targeted Christians and Catholic kids. What kind of consequences do the gender-affirming therapists, doctors, or even the parents of these shooters face after these types of shootings?
Well, as for the parents and potential therapists in this case, again, all of that is still currently being investigated by the FBI. I know the Secretary of Health and Human Services this morning said that HHS is investigating perhaps links between some of these drugs and these prescription drugs that some of these minors may be taking, and an increase in violence. And obviously we have mental health problems in this country that this administration and Secretary Kennedy will continue to speak out about in the work that we're doing to solve it.
Thank you. And just to follow up, I've seen a lot of calls for action, among these lawmakers saying that we shouldn't just be praying. One that I've seen on the right, actually, is calls for the FBI to institute a new class of domestic terrorism that involves trans ideology. Is that something that the administration would support?
I would have to check with the appropriate people on that.
Daniel. Thank you, Caroline. We saw some new revised economic data come out today showing the U.S. economy moved at a 3.3% clip, largely buoyed by a surge in capex. What's the White House reaction to this, and is this sort of the president's vision beginning to come to life after the Big Beautiful Bill was passed in July?
Yes, I mean, look, we did say that once the Big Beautiful Bill was signed into law, we're going to see the effects of this massive pro-growth piece of legislation. As I laid out for you as we head into the Labor Day weekend, there's many positive economic indicators that the American people can be hopeful about. But don't forget, we are reversing 4 years of reckless spending from the previous administration, of slamming regulations down the throats of American business owners and consumers across the country. But the administration is working very hard to unravel all of that and to ensure that small business owners and workers are thriving and that they have more money in their own pockets to spend. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Caroline. Back on the CDC, there was reporting that some of the initial problems between RFK and the CDC director stemmed from miscommunications or differences on vaccine policy. So I wonder if you could just say whether or not the president believes that the COVID vaccine should be available to and covered by insurance for all Americans, regardless of age and pre-existing conditions.
What I will tell you is that the FDA recently revoked the emergency use authorizations for 3 COVID vaccinations while simultaneously greenlighting 4 new COVID-19 vaccines with 2025 and 2026 formulas. The reason for the revocation of that emergency use authorization is because obviously the COVID pandemic and the public health emergency is over. But just to correct the record, because there's been a lot of misinformation on this, the FDA's decision does not affect the availability of COVID vaccines for Americans who want them. We believe in individual choice. That's a promise both the president and the secretary have made, and it's a promise they have now delivered on.
Question, if I could, Caroline. Second question, if I could. Sorry. I wonder if you could ask. I wonder if you could answer why the president hasn't acknowledged the shooting at CDC headquarters that took place earlier in August, where a police officer was killed, and it was reported that the motivation for the shooting was somebody who was really unhappy with the effects of the COVID vaccine?
We absolutely were very much aware of that shooting. The Secretary of Health and Human Services put out a statement immediately. He was in touch with the CDC, and he actually traveled to Georgia to assess the situation and to mourn with the people who work in that building there. So. Go ahead.
With respect to Labor Day, one of the most underrepresented groups right now are police officers. 30,000 police officers short in America right now. To Brandon's question, 1,300 short in Chicago, 3,000 short in New York, 500 short here in Washington, D.C. What can the White House, what can the President do to help recruitment of police officers? You've done well with the military and Border Patrol. What can be done to get more police officers on the streets of America?
Well, the president has certainly been very successful in recruiting federal law enforcement. If you look at the ICE recruitment campaign that was led by he and our Secretary of Homeland Security, we've seen more than, I believe, 130,000 applicants to join ICE, which is just amazing. There's more applicants now than there are jobs to fill, and we're very grateful for that. Clearly, Americans want to serve their communities. They just need a leader who encourages them to do so. So maybe Governor Pritzker should spend less time demonizing the police, more time trying to recruit more police, and more time trying to call the President of the United States to get crime in his city under control. The President wants to allow law enforcement, whether it's state, local, federal, to do their jobs, to arrest criminals, to put them behind bars, and to remove public safety threats from American communities. He'll continue to do that. Thank you, guys.
Welcome to Vocal, the free speech social app that gives you a platform to amplify your voice. Speak freely, connect boldly, and be part of a growing movement for truth, faith, and freedom. Want to know what's happening right now? The Now Playing feature shows you exactly who's live and what's streaming in real time. Check out the show's feed, a non-stop lineup including Lindell TV News 24/7, shows and on-demand programming all in one place. Connect with your favorite host and never miss a show. Explore the featured page for quick access to Lindell TV's top shows. Follow your favorites and watch their newest content flow right into your feed. And when they go live on Vocal, you can join the live chat and be part of the action. Ask questions, share your thoughts, even help shape future shows. Stay informed on issues around securing our elections by following your state's Cause of America account. Join a group and connect on a deeper level, from faith and freedom to the future of our nation. Go to vocal.com or download the app today and be a part of the mission to save our country.
Let's face it, you can't trust Big Pharma. They've already tried to block ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and raise prices on everything from antibiotics to your daily meds. Well, there's good news. All Family Pharmacy is standing up for medical freedom and helping people get the treatments they actually want. My family and I use them all the time. They made it easy and affordable without the runaround. While other pharmacies are jacking up prices, they've actually dropped theirs. Ivermectin now starts at just $2 a capsule. Use my promo code Lindell10, you get an extra 10% off of that. You need ivermectin, antibiotics, or methylene blue, you name it, they've got it. They make it simple. You fill out a short online form, a licensed doctor reviews it, and your meds ship fast right to your front door. If you want to be prepared and have your medications on hand, this is your new pharmacy. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell. Promo code Lindell10 saves you even more. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell. Promo code Lindell10. Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning into Lindell TV. Welcome back. We just wrapped up a press briefing here at the White House, and it was another loaded one, as they usually are. Caroline Leavitt addressed a number of topics today, beginning the briefing with sending her condolences on behalf of the White House to the families that were tragically impacted from the shooting in Minneapolis. Tragic situation over there with the transgender shooter that killed 2 children while they were at their first day of school in Catholic Mass. 17 injured, 14 of those 17 were also children, so it's just heartbreaking. It was brought up in the briefing today that Jen Psaki, Caroline Leavitt's predecessor, as we know, had an issue with Vice President J.D. Vance saying that he was praying for these families, as you know, many of us are. Probably most of our Lindell TV viewers are praying for these families, and I guess Jen Psaki has a problem with that. These liberals are very put off by prayer, which is very disturbing. I think that's a normal reaction and response in a tragic situation like this. So the fact that Jen Psaki has an issue with that, I think, is very telling. But a lot was discussed surrounding this shooting and whether or not, the Democrats that enable and promote this behavior will be held accountable. Whether the parents of this individual will be held accountable. I mean, this is a very deeply rooted issue. You have to look to mental illness, which I think is a common theme amongst these transgender murderers. Many of them, tend to have deeply rooted issues, depression, anxiety, just mental illness, and many of them are on drugs for that. SSRIs are commonly prescribed to deal with these issues that they are enduring. And I, in fact, just saw on that topic, I'm going to pull up this thread here. Was just posted by America First Legal. Biden's FDA knew puberty blockers were linked to increased risks of depression and suicidality, yet they still recommended them for children. So I guess now the question is, will the Biden regime, will every single person from the Biden government, every single doctor, every single influencer that pushed this and normalized this upon children who are vulnerable and perhaps going through hard times and urging them to change their gender as a solution to all their problems, will any of them be held accountable? I think they absolutely need to be thrown in jail where they belong, because now innocent children are dying as a result of these sick, delusional people who've basically been cheered on by the Democrat Party and told that this type of behavior is okay. They are enabled and encouraged. As we know, the Minneapolis Lieutenant Governor proudly wears a shirt that says "Protect Trans Kids." Governor Tim Walz has spoken at length about Minneapolis and Minnesota being a sanctuary state for trans kids. The mayor of Minneapolis, said that they will protect trans kids at all costs. So you see where I'm going here. This is an issue that is propped up and promoted by Democrats, and now innocent children die as a result of it. It's truly sick and disturbing. I know our very own Kara Castronova, our White House correspondent, was in the briefing today, and I believe she will be joining us as soon as she is out of the briefing, so she should be popping on with us any moment to recap what was discussed in the briefing. Another big issue, of course, was the reform of D.C., making it safe and beautiful again. President Trump, as we know, has done an incredible job working on this city and federalizing it, sending out the National Guard and federal agents to really crack down on the crime. Caroline Leavitt reported today that as of today, there have been 1,283 arrests, and this is just in roughly the last 2 weeks when the federalization of D.C. was announced. Crime is down 19%. Carjackings are down 67%. Robberies are down 40%. Motor vehicle theft is down 32%. Of course, we also know President Trump on Monday, earlier this week, signed an executive order to eliminate cashless bail, which will greatly aid in getting these criminals off the streets. Obviously, if a violent criminal knows that they're going to be released, they're probably going to commit the crime again. So this is a huge step in the right direction to actually create some lasting change here. We also know, President Trump signed a separate executive order instructing National Park Services to hire additional prosecutors to focus on violence here in Washington, D.C. So they are really cracking down and they're doing a fantastic job. I can tell you firsthand, D.C. truly feels like a wonderful place to be. And that was not the case 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I was scared to even walk down the street. Now it's just thriving. It's gorgeous. There's so many people out enjoying this beautiful weather, mind you. We're finally out of this horrible, muggy summer that we were experiencing, and it's just beautiful, perfect weather. People are happier. People love it. Even liberals are having to admit that President Trump's efforts are working. In fact, Muriel Bowser credited President Trump for surging federal law enforcement personnel and admits that his efforts are successful. So this is pretty amazing when you have DC Mayor Muriel Bowser coming forward and finally telling the truth. I mean, there's really no denying it, obviously. I mean, you can just see it, and you'd have to be, I don't know, some sort of deranged lunatic to not be able to come forward and admit the facts. I have talked to a couple of them here on our Man on the Street segments. You never know who you're going to run into, but there was some crazy lady out there yesterday. I told the story on air, but I will remind you all again. She came running up to us because she saw the Lindell TV mic flag, and she was very upset about the fascist in the White House who's deployed the National Guard, and now she doesn't feel safe to walk down the street because there's a high military presence here. I mean, these people are delusional. Then you ask, okay, so you don't feel safe when the murder rates have gone down. There hasn't been a murder now in 15 days. Crime is down 19%. Over 1,000 arrests have been made in the last 2 weeks. Yet she claims she doesn't feel safe because of the increased military presence. I'm sorry, any sane, normal, rational person would argue the opposite, that they feel safer walking down the street now that there is an increased police presence here. So these people are just delusional, but you know, that's nothing new. That's just par for the course for these crazy radical left liberals who will do anything to object to President Trump's efforts. And, you know, if he found the cure for cancer, they'd somehow find a problem with that too. So I applaud President Trump and his administration for working tirelessly to get a hold on this issue. Brandon Tatum was actually there in the press briefing today. He was in the new media seat, and he raised the issue of, you know, what is the administration looking at over in Chicago, because we know that the crime issue is totally out of control in Chicago. I mean, it's the worst in the nation, and there's been a lot of pushback so far. Trump has been, you know, talking about going into Chicago, enacting the same sort of process over there as he has here in D.C. Of course, Governor Pritzker over there is relentlessly pushing back and, you know, objecting to this. Meanwhile, you have all of the residents, all of these great black folks who live there who are begging President Trump to come in and take over the city just like he has here in Washington, D.C. So, I mean, there is such a major disconnect. Caroline Leavitt did point out that Chicago for the last 13 consecutive years has had the most murders and the highest murder rate. The murder rate in Chicago is 3 times higher per capita than Los Angeles and 5 times higher than New York City, not to mention all of the discrepancies in the data. So this is just, you know, the probably misinformation that we have, the whatever numbers that are officially reported, right? But we know these numbers are fudged. We know that many of the homicides and carjackings and murders and whatnot are not actually reported accurately. So these are the statistics that we have based on inaccurate information. Chances are the numbers are actually much higher and much worse than is what we are even able to see than what is actually reported. So it is pretty amazing. It's amazing that anyone would object to making these cities safe again. Caroline Leavitt really drilled down on the fact that, you know, President Trump wants this country to be safe and beautiful everywhere. We shouldn't have to risk our lives going out into the streets, going to and from work, leaving our house. He really cares about the American people. And if he can clean this city up, one of the worst cities up in 2 weeks, why not make that the goal everywhere? I mean, Democrats just, I guess at this point, are admitting that they love to live in filth and disgust and crime-ridden, horrible cities that are totally unlivable. Of course, they're okay with it because these Democrats that allow all of this to happen get to go home to their mansions or gated mansions where they're totally removed from all of the insanity. But for the average American, they have to endure this on a daily basis. Places like LA, Chicago, New York City, formerly DC. I mean, these are all places that have been riddled with Democrat crime and Democrat policies, and they are failing cities and states because of it. So let's do better. Let's clean up the country and make everywhere somewhere desirable, somewhere that we can all live safely without having to fear for our lives every day. I don't think there is any problem with that. And I know President Trump is actively working to make this happen across the nation. So we'll see what happens there. I guess Kara is not joining us today, but that does it for this hour of Live in DC. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Up next is the Mike Lindell Show at 2 p.m. Eastern. I will see you there because I'm going to be on with Mike Lindell to talk about censorship. So tune in for that. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.